It is after 2 in the morning in a northeast suburb, and something the size of a wolf is standing at the edge of the yard, watching the house. By sunrise, it is gone. That animal is an eastern coyote, and everywhere it appears, from Pennsylvania to Maine, one story follows it: that the state released these animals on purpose, to thin out the deer. Every agency ever asked says it never happened. But the story will not die. So if nobody released them, how did a prairie animal become the top predator of the eastern suburbs? And why are so many people so sure they were planted? There is one creature everyone swore was let loose. A lab proved it walked. And where it walked will tell you everything. Start with the animal itself, because almost nothing people believe about it is quite right. The coyote most Northeasterners picture is a western coyote. A skinny desert dog trotting across a highway in Arizona, 20, maybe 30 pounds, all ears and legs. The animal standing in that suburban yard is a different creature. It weighs 35 to 45 pounds, and some of them push past 60. It carries a broader skull, a heavier chest, and jaws built for larger prey. From a distance in a headlight, people mistake it for a small wolf, and in a way they are not wrong. Scientists have a plain name for it: the eastern coyote. Everyone else reaches for a stranger word: the coywolf. That word exists because of what turned up when researchers finally looked at the animal's blood. A biologist named Javier Monzon analyzed the DNA of 437 eastern coyotes across 10 northeastern states and Ontario. And what he found was not one animal but several braided together. On average, the eastern coyote's genome came back at roughly 64% coyote, about a quarter wolf, split between gray wolf and the eastern wolf of the Great Lakes, and close to 10% domestic dog. Read that again slowly. The animal in the yard is roughly 2/3 coyote. The rest of it is wolf and dog. It is not a coyote that got big. It is something new, assembled out of 3 lineages, wearing a coyote's name because we did not have a better one. And this is where the whole mystery begins. Because if you tell someone that the animal in their backyard is part wolf, part dog, part coyote, larger than a coyote has any right to be, arrived within living memory, and now sits at the top of the food chain. In a place that had no such predator for 100 years, the mind does something very human. It looks for a hand behind it. Somebody, it decides, must have done this on purpose. That instinct has a name in the folklore of the eastern woods. Hunters call it the stalking story. And it goes like this: the deer herds got too big. The state could not cut them down fast enough with hunting seasons alone. So somewhere in a back office, a decision was made. Bring in a predator. Release coyotes into the hills, quietly, in the dark, and let nature solve the problem the agencies could not solve in daylight. No press release, no paperwork. Just trucks on a logging road at night and cages opening. It is not a fringe belief. It is one of the most widespread wildlife rumors in America. And it does not stay in the Northeast. In 2012, a Tennessee state lawmaker named Frank Nicely said it out loud in a committee hearing. He told the room that the state wildlife agency had brought coyotes in to keep the deer population down, that their biologists were not dumb, and that they knew exactly what they were doing. The claim was fact-checked and rated false. The agency had done no such thing, but the fact that a sitting legislator repeated it as settled truth tells you how deep the story runs. And the agencies know it runs deep because they keep having to answer it. The Pennsylvania Game Commission put a denial in writing on its own website, saying that some people actually believe the agency stalked coyotes to reduce deer numbers, and that nothing could be further from the truth. South Carolina's Wildlife Department wrote, in capital letters, that it had never imported and released coyotes into the state for any reason, including deer management. When a wildlife agency starts shouting in capital letters on its public website, it is not arguing with a handful of cranks. It is arguing with a belief that will not go away, no matter how many times it is buried. So here's the tension the rest of this video lives inside. The people telling the stalking story are wrong about the mechanism, but they are not crazy. And to understand why, you have to know how these animals actually got here. because the true story is almost stranger than the rumor. They walked. Not all at once, and not in a straight line, but over decades, one dispersing animal at a time, along a route nobody designed. Go back a little over a century. The gray wolf and the eastern wolf that once ruled the northeastern forests had been trapped, shot, and poisoned nearly out of existence. By the late 1800s, the wolf was gone from the Adirondacks, gone from most of New England, an empty throne at the top of the food web. Nature does not leave a throne empty for long. Out on the Great Plains, the western coyote had spent generations being persecuted just as hard, and had responded the way coyotes always respond. It spread. As people cleared forests and opened farmland and removed the wolves that had always kept coyotes in check, the coyote pushed outward in every direction. One arm of that expansion went north, up and around the top of the Great Lakes into Ontario. And there, in the mixed forests of the Algonquin region, it met the survivors. The last remnant eastern wolves hanging on, short on mates of their own kind. What happened next is written directly into the animal's blood. The coyotes and the surviving wolves bred. Not once, not by accident, but across many encounters over many years, in a slow genetic braid that scientists now call a hybrid swarm. The offspring were bigger than coyotes, bolder than coyotes, and crucially, better suited to the deep eastern forest and the cold eastern winter than a pure prairie coyote could ever be. Then that new animal did what coyotes do. It kept moving. South and east, out of Ontario, down into New York, across New England, filling the exact empty niche the wolf had left behind. The timeline is documented, region by region. The coyote first appeared in the Adirondacks sometime between 1920 and 1940. By 1950, it was found throughout the park, including the deep interior. Over the next few decades, it filled in the rest of the state, and by the 1970s, it was firmly established across almost all of New York. It reached New Brunswick in Atlantic Canada in 1975. It just kept going. Today, the eastern coyote lives in every county in New York except Long Island and New York City, with a population estimated between 20,000 and 30,000 animals, something on the order of 14,500 breeding pairs. It reoccupied, almost exactly, the ground the eastern wolf once held. Nobody planned that, nobody could have, and that, for decades, was the official answer. Ask a state biologist how the coyote got here, and you would get the migration story. They walked north around the lakes, they picked up wolf genes in Ontario, they walked back down into the empty forest, and they stayed. It was clean, documented, and backed by the animal's own DNA. Except the public never bought it. And that gap between what the science says and what people in the woods believe is the real subject of this video. If you are the kind of person who watches all the way to the end of an investigation like this, do me one favor and subscribe. This channel goes deep on the animals hiding in plain sight around us, and subscribing is how you catch the next one when it comes out. Now back to the question that will not die. Why do so many people believe they were released? And the honest answer is that the belief did not come from nowhere. It grew out of real events that people saw with their own eyes and interpreted the only way that made sense to them. Take Pennsylvania. The stalking rumor there can be traced to a specific moment in the late 1980s when a deer hunter shot a coyote and found it wearing an ear tag. An ear tag. To a wildlife biologist, an ear tag means one thing. Somebody, at some point, live-trapped this animal for a study, tagged it, and released it right back where they found it. Routine science. But to the hunter holding a tagged predator he had been told did not belong here, the tag meant something else entirely. It meant the state had handled this animal. The state had it in its hands. And if the state had it in its hands, the state put it here. One ear tag, and a rumor caught fire that is still burning almost 40 years later. It happens with cougars too, and the cougar version is even more revealing. In parts of the Midwest, wildlife agencies run track surveys where they clear a small circle of ground, spread a little lime or fine dirt across it, and place a scent lure in the middle to draw animals in so they leave clean footprints to be counted. To a biologist, it is a survey station. To a passing driver who sees an official truck, a cleared patch of earth, and a strange scent set up in the woods, it looks like exactly one thing: a release site. And so in Missouri, wildlife officials have spent years fielding reports from people who swear they saw Department of Conservation trucks unloading mountain lions into the forest. What they almost certainly saw was a survey crew, or a truck that had nothing to do with lions at all. But the human eye fills gaps with stories, and the story it reaches for, again and again, is that someone in authority did this on purpose. So the rumor has real roots. Tagged animals, survey stations, official trucks on back roads. Every piece of it is something a real person genuinely witnessed. They just read the evidence backwards. And here's where the clean official story starts to get complicated. Because if the migration account were completely spotless, if human hands had truly never touched these animals, the rumor would be easy to dismiss. It is not that simple. The uncomfortable truth is that people did handle these canids. Not the way the rumor claims, but enough that the line between the two stories gets very blurry. Go back to Algonquin, the same region where the coyotes met the wolves. From 1956 to 1968, researchers there kept captive colonies of wolves, coyotes, and coyote dog hybrids in pens at a wildlife research station. Read that plainly. For 12 years, in the exact place the eastern coyote was being born in the wild, scientists were also keeping wolves and coyotes and their crosses in cages, breeding them, studying them. Modern genetic work has concluded that those captive experiments almost certainly did not create the wild hybrids we see today, that the breeding in the forest happened on its own. But try telling that to someone predisposed to suspicion. Caged wolves, caged coyotes, deliberate crossbreeding, in the same forest, at the same time. The rumor did not invent the idea of humans engineering these animals. Humans really were, right there, for reasons of their own. It goes deeper. In 1964 and 1965, research culls in that same park killed roughly 36% of its wolves, more than a third of the population, right at the moment coyotes were moving in, and the genetic record shows what that did. With so many wolves suddenly gone, the door swung open, and coyote genes flooded into the surviving wolf population. In other words, a human decision, the culling of wolves, directly shaped the hybrid animal that came out the other side. The human decision that shaped the hybrid was not a release at all. It was the removal of the wolves that would otherwise have kept the coyotes out. The human fingerprints on these animals are real. They simply belong to a different chapter than the one the rumor tells. And there is one more piece the agencies rarely lead with. Coyotes really have been moved by human hands, illegally, by private individuals. In South Carolina, people trucked live coyotes into the state to stock fenced enclosures for hound running, releasing them so dogs would have something to chase. The state has prosecuted people for exactly this. So, when a wildlife agency says it never released coyotes, that is true. But it is not the same as saying no human ever released a coyote in that state. Some did. Just not the government and not to eat deer. Stack all of that together and you can see why the rumor breathes. Captive canid colonies existed. Wolf culls reshaped the hybrid. Private citizens really did truck coyotes around and let them loose. The public was not hallucinating a human hand. There genuinely was one on the landscape. They simply pinned it to the wrong act and the wrong motive. So what is actually true? When you hold the whole picture up to the light, you are left with 2 or 3 possibilities, and none of them is fully comfortable. The first is the simplest. The stalking story is folklore, pure and ordinary, grown from misread tags in survey stations and trucks. The same way every region grows its own legends. Comforting, except it does not explain the intensity. Folklore does not usually make a sitting legislator stake his credibility on it in a committee room. The second possibility is harder. The belief may be a true grievance wearing a false costume. People in these regions watch their world change. They watched deer season shift, watched a large new predator appear in the woods their grandfathers hunted, and they knew, correctly, that the state had spent a century reshaping that landscape. The state had let the wolves be wiped out. The state managed the deer. The state stocked pheasants and fish and other game by the tens of thousands out in the open with paperwork. So when a mysterious predator arrived, blaming the agency was not paranoia from nowhere. It was pattern recognition aimed at the wrong target, A real instinct pointed at the wrong act and the wrong motive. And the third possibility is the strangest, and it lives inside the animal itself. Scientists still cannot fully agree on what the eastern coyote even is. Some, like the zoologist Roland Kays, argue it is simply a coyote with some extra ancestry, not a separate species at all, that the word coywolf oversells it. Others argue it is distinct enough to deserve its own name. The experts are still fighting over its taxonomy, its diet, its very identity. And when the science cannot hand people a clean, finished origin story, the human mind does not tolerate the blank. It fills the gap, and the story it reaches for is a human one. Because a human villain is easier to hold than a genetic accident that assembled itself over 50 years in a forest no one was watching. Here is what the agencies genuinely cannot do, and it is the crack the rumor keeps living in. They can prove they did not stalk coyotes. They have the records, or rather the absence of them, and the biology to back it. But they cannot prove that no one ever released a single coyote anywhere, because private, illegal releases really happened and were never fully documented. So the agency is stuck saying we did not do this, which is true, while being unable to say nobody did this, which would be a lie. And to a suspicious ear, we did not do it. But we cannot promise no one did. Sounds exactly like a dodge. The very honesty of the answer keeps the conspiracy alive. And then there is the detail that should end the argument on its own, and never does. The stalking story only makes sense if coyotes actually control deer. They do not. A study spanning 6 eastern states found that white-tailed deer populations kept right on growing after coyotes arrived. Deer are only a small part of what a coyote eats, and coyotes are almost impossible to reduce by killing them. You would have to remove around 70% of a coyote population every single year to make the numbers fall, and even then they answer back by having bigger litters. No bounty, no poisoning campaign, no removal program has ever wiped them out anywhere. So the idea that an agency would deliberately release an animal that does not control deer, cannot be recalled, cannot be reduced, and only spreads, as a tool to manage deer, is not just unproven. It is the opposite of how the animal behaves. The rumor fails on its own internal logic, and it survives anyway. If a mystery that refuses to die is the kind of thing that keeps you watching, this is exactly the channel for it. And subscribing is the only way to make sure the next one finds you. Because there is one last animal to talk about. The one from the beginning, the one everybody agreed had to have been released. On the 11th of June, 2011, on the Wilbur Cross Parkway near Milford, Connecticut, an SUV struck and killed a mountain lion, a cougar, in Connecticut. Full-grown, male, about 140 pounds, somewhere between 2 and 5 years old, lying dead on a parkway in one of the most densely populated corners of the United States. And the reaction was immediate and unanimous. There had not been a wild cougar confirmed in Connecticut in more than 100 years, so it had to be somebody's exotic pet. It had to have escaped a private collection or been dumped when it got too big. It had to have been released. There was no other explanation. Everyone said so. The public said so. Even officials assumed it at first. Then they ran the DNA. And the science took the release theory apart piece by piece. The tissue was sent to the United States Forest Service Wildlife Genetics Laboratory in Missoula, Montana. The lab supervisor there, Christy Pilgrim, and her team compared the animal's genetic profile against a database of hundreds of individual cougars from across the West. And the match was not local. It was not a zoo animal from anywhere nearby. This cougar had come from the Black Hills of South Dakota, and it had not been shipped. It had been photographed and sampled along the way. Its DNA had been collected from scat and hair in Minnesota. In Wisconsin, more than once. It was caught on a trail camera in Michigan. It passed through New York. Investigators reconstructed a journey of more than 1,500 miles in a straight line, and likely far longer following the actual terrain, over roughly 2 years. It was the longest journey ever recorded for a cougar. The previous record was 663 miles. This animal nearly tripled it. And every physical detail confirmed the same thing. It had not been declawed. It had not been neutered. It carried no microchip, no sign of any owner. Buried under its skin were porcupine quills, The mark of an animal that had been hunting wild prey the hard way for a long time. Even the chemistry of its body, the isotopes locked into its tissue, matched a wild diet, not the fare of a caged pet. Connecticut's environmental commissioner at the time, Daniel Estey, called the journey a testament to the tenacity and adaptability of the species. And it was. But look at what it really means for the story we have been telling. The single animal that everyone was most certain had been released, the one case where release seemed like the only possible answer, was the one animal that most completely proved it had not. It had walked. Alone. Across half a continent, through Minnesota winters and Wisconsin farmland, and the outskirts of towns full of people who never knew it was passing, looking for a mate it would never find, until it reached the ocean side of the country and a parkway ended everything. No one released it. No one could have released it into that. It let itself in. And that is the answer the rumor was circling the whole time without ever seeing it. Nobody had to release these animals. The wild does not wait for permission, or a cage, or a truck on a logging road at night. It disperses. It walks. It finds the empty throne, and it fills it. The coyote did it slowly, over 50 years, one dispersing animal at a time. The cougar covered the same idea in a single staggering one-way walk across half the country. It was the same force at work, only running at a different speed. So here's what this whole story is really about. It is not about a conspiracy, or trucks on a logging road at night, or a hand behind a curtain. It is about how badly we need there to be one. We would rather believe the state let something loose than accept the truth, which is that the wild was never actually gone. It was pushed to the edges, thinned to a rumor, and it spent 100 years quietly finding its way back, on its own feet, without asking us, without telling us, into the exact ground we thought we had made safe. Go back to that yard, 2 a.m. The eastern coyote at the edge of the light, 2/3 coyote and the rest of it wolf and dog, standing where a wolf stood 200 years ago, put there by nothing but its own long walk out of Ontario. Somewhere north of New York City, a cougar's ghost route still runs through the woods it crossed and no one recorded. And in the blood of every one of those coyotes, the eastern wolf that was supposed to be gone is still riding along, still here, folded invisibly into an animal we do not even have the right name for. None of them were released. All of them came back. And they are not finished. They are still moving, still filling in the map, still standing just past the edge of the porch light in towns that are certain nothing wild is left. Watching the house, waiting for the lights to go out. If you like this video, YouTube also thinks you're going to like the one on your screen right now. Go ahead and click it.